On the legislation that is before us, I know that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are no doubt about to launch into how we've had an ineffective first 100 days and Congress is not doing anything. Well, let me put in perspective for the American people what we're focusing on. We're focusing on undoing the damage of the last 4 years of the Biden administration. The president is doing that on a daily basis in the White House today. And then we in Congress are using the powers that we have before us in a obvious narrow majority and in a narrow majority in the Senate, where you have to get through things through the Senate with 60 votes. We're using the tools in front of us to try to limit and minimize the damage caused by the previous administration and, frankly, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle today. Notably, we're talking about, in this situation, what we have done so far. We have passed legislation to secure our elections, H.R. 22, the SAVE Act, to guarantee that only citizens vote, American citizens vote in American elections, to hold rogue judges accountable for issuing nationwide injunctions and try to change the process, which, by the way, is not partisan. Elena Kagan talked about the need for injunction relief. The Democrat Solicitor General under the previous administration talked about the need for injunction reform. And so we offer legislation that would change and reform injunctions. We passed that before Easter so that you can't have a single judge legislating and making national policy by temporary restraining order or injunction. We made changes on border policy with the Lake and Riley Act, which is extremely important, and legislation to combat the flow of fentanyl. But importantly, what we've been trying to do is undo the damage on the border. Now, keep in mind what has happened now over the first 100 days. In just 100 days, Southwest border apprehensions have decreased by 94% year over year. Now, I want everybody to consider that for a second. 94%. Now, what changed? Have we passed a massive law? Have we enacted the law that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle last year said was necessary, this bipartisan bill, which, by the way, would have codified all of the bad policies under the Biden administration? No, the only thing that changed was a White House willing to enforce the law. That's it, literally. And now you have a 94 reduction in the apprehensions at the border, 94% reduction. And keep in mind, we are now at levels of somewhere around 100 to 200 a day, 3,000 to 6,000 a month. We had 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 a day apprehensions under the Biden administration. The president has restored common sense, ending DEI in the military and working to keep men from competing in women's sports, affirming that there are two genders. These are common sense. You wouldn't think we'd have to spend time on the floor of the House of Representatives doing those things or having the president do it by executive order, but here we are. Energy, the president has unlocked Americans' energy potential, or at least taken a giant step to do so. Reopening 625 million acres for drilling, withdrawing from the disastrous Paris Climate Agreement, approving new LNG projects. And here before us today, we have what we call CRAs under the Congressional Review Act. And the purpose of these is to undo burdensome Biden regulations. This is our ability and our prerogative to hold the Biden administration accountable, and that doesn't stop just because the Democrats lost an election and we have a Republican in the White House. We have a duty to undo some of that damage. Under these bills, we would repeal California's Advanced Clean Trucks waiver, which currently would allow the state to mandate the sale of zero-emission trucks. Mandate the sale of zero-emission trucks. Repeal the California's Advanced Clean Cars waiver, allowing the state to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Put an end to California's implementation of its most recent nitrogen oxide engine emission standards, which create burdensome and unworkable standards for heavy-duty on-road engines. Nullify a rule by the national parks that would infringe on the employment of a recreational area, contravening the agency's own mandate when it was created. And finally, one that will end an Endangered Species Act designation by the Fish and Wildlife Service that would threaten water resources and other conservation efforts. Now, these things matter to the average American. My colleagues are going to say, oh, this is small ball. It doesn't matter. Every one of these regulations add up to interference with the enjoyment of life by the American people, drive up the price of the goods and services for the average hardworking American family, make vehicles more expensive, make our lives more costly, and then you wonder why you're suffering from inflation and you're suffering from the inability to afford to live in the modern world. So this Congress is taking steps to undo that damage, working with the White House to restore the ability of the average American family to live and afford the basic necessities of life, including vehicles, and the right to be able to choose in an open market the vehicle of their choice. Now, again, I know my colleagues are going to say, well, we're infringing on California. But let's remember that California gets treated specially and uniquely, and that then has a domino effect through the rest of the country. And that is unique to California, based on past precedents involving Los Angeles smog and other things, where that is causing a direct impact on other states across the country. So with that, I will reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlemen.